Hello everyone and welcome to a Massachusetts Central Radio Show. I'm your humble host, Mike Mo, here on a Friday night at about 11 o'clock. Hello everybody and welcome to the show, and welcome back to the show, to be honest. I did not record one yesterday. I did record a gear change show, and I recorded one about, if you guys didn't miss it, I recorded one about the GT3 class. And kind of the origins of how it kind of started, and how it was kind of started by the Pirelli, the Speed World Challenge back then. Hope you guys enjoyed it. So yeah, hello everyone. Welcome back to another one of these. I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I've had on my mind since I started putting these back up somewhat regularly. I don't think I'm going to do a gear change show tomorrow, since I've already did one Wednesday already, so you guys don't need a second one. So what am I going to talk about tonight? Oh yes, I wanted to talk about the ever-present talk about electric vehicles and what's been happening lately. So I'm just gonna tell you guys all that it's been an interesting couple of years for the electric vehicle, and my thoughts on it, and the process and how they're going about it right now. So So the one thing that I will kind of reiterate is that electric vehicles are going to be part of our future. I don't know if it's going to be our total future. There's a few things that are, it's going to be, what I think auto manufacturers should do is it should be an option for vehicles and stuff like that. I don't think General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler should all jump on this total EV back. They should still offer gasoline engines for the time being, and it's just kind of not great that they're dumping all this money into technology that really doesn't have the same traction that it did a number of years ago. And a lot of you guys are wondering, when did the first electric vehicle or self-propelled or non-gasoline propelled vehicle ever start? For that, we have to not go back into the 90s, onto the 80s, onto the 2000s, onto the 80s, but into, I'm going to say, at least the early, the 50s, the mid to late 50s, early 60s. So, a lot of you guys are like, well, what types of engines have propelled cars? So, for those of you who don't know, during the 30s, actually, the quest to go faster and test speeds kind of actually goes back to the 30s, and the 30s kind of started the whole land speed record thing. For those of you who don't know, the Grand Prix cars, the Silver Arrow Grand Prix cars that were there had 400, 500, 600 horsepower by the time by the end of the 30s rolled around into the Second World War. But a lot of the teams, a lot of the places like Audi and Mercedes actually developed streamlined cars, and they put Mercedes was Audi kind of did it with the B16, with a 5-liter V16 that they had in the back of their the 5-6-liter V16 that they had in a D-type streamliner that they used to run at not the Nürburgring, but at Monza and a lot of the other big racetracks. The Avis Ring, which was basically 2 Autobahn runs back and forth, and the cars used to do like 230, 240 miles an hour. It was kind of used to do like 220, 230 miles an hour. But they figured it out very fast that wasn't going to be the way forward, so they needed something much faster, and they wanted something that was going to crush the rest of the world and kind of just set the world ablaze. The Germans wanted to go 250, wanted to go between 250 and 300, and maybe even faster than that. So they decided to go with not the gasoline engine, because at that point the most powerful engine in the world was a 6-liter V. At that time was I think this was like the mid to late 30s, so I think that the Auto Union Grand Prix cars all had 6-liter W16s and V16s and twin turbo V8s with 600 horsepower, and that was kind of the limit for engines, especially with the tires they had. So the Germans decided to make bigger tires, a more streamlined body, give it a couple of wings, and give it a very aerodynamic shape so it could cut through the air. The engine actually ended up being a bomber engine from their. It was either a Messerschmitt or a Junker engine, and it was called the T80. T80 was done. Yeah, so the Mercedes. So it was a 6-wheel car, and it was going to. Oh yes, by the way, fun fact: it was actually designed and developed by Ferdinand Porsche, who would go on to launch a little German company called Porsche. After he would go on to help out, go on to Volkswagen, then Porsche, and all the other guys. So so the engine, so the cars back then, so the fastest car back then was between the record wagon, was between the there was the record wagon, which was basically this it had a V12. It had a V12 and it had 755 horsepower. That was probably, and that was a 8-liter V8, which was V12. That was pretty big, and it had a 4-speed transmission. Engine cooling was isolated with no coolant, as air intakes were kept very small and aerodynamic. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Rudolf Caracciola ended up doing 268, and I think somebody else ended up doing 268. So I think Porsche did the same thing, but so they wanted to target a speed of nearly 550 kilometers an hour, just 342. And you want to know what type of engine they used? They used a Daimler-Benz 603 engine. For those of you who do not know what that does, they put that in the Baumann Voss B52, the Messerschmitt, the Heinkel, the Dorna, and the Dorna 2. These, for those of you who don't know, a Messerschmitt's actually pretty substantial engine. So, and it was a V12 engine, and it produced over 3,000 horsepower. It was basically meant, they basically had a projected top speed of 466 miles an hour. Unfortunately, they set it up for for a 1940 record walk or record week. And for those of you who know that, who know, that never happened. Did the Germans ever achieve that world record? No, it never happened, because 1940. Because 1940, I don't think the autobahn would have was going to. The autobahn was used for something else. It was used to drive troops and weapons and tanks and everything across Germany into Europe, so they could take over Europe. Because, surprise, surprise, World War II happened. So, a Daimler-Benz 603 V12 with 3,000 horsepower, capable with a car that theoretically was capable of like 450 miles an hour, which would have been quite the record. But unfortunately, since the Germans wanted to start a war with everybody, and Britain was not very happy, and then eventually in 1939, well, the Blitzkrieg happened, and Poland got invaded, and we started World War II. So that was null and void. Now, the other cars that were different, that were run differently on different types of propulsion, would be in the late 60s, early 60s, late 70s, with the turbine cars, and with the Hallmark turbine, gas turbine, and the Indy Lotus car, and then the Chrysler turbine car that they did in the late 60s, early 70s. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that was back when they took a turbine engine, a jet engine basically, and you could run it on basically anything. You could race it on corn oil and it would run. So anything that had a high octane on it, you could run it on anything. It was hilarious. People could run it on corn oil and vegetable oil and all this other stuff, and it would be able to burn it and be able to burn cleanly. It would smell like vegetable. Your car would have vegetable oil coming out of the tailpipe, but hey. So yeah, so that was alternative stuff, and then we can't also do diesel, but diesel was more of a diesel is petrol based, so it's technically, and I know aviation gas is technically, but it's propulsed by something other than a regular engine. So but it wasn't until the and then the Wankel rotor engines became a thing, because that was kind of weird, and people were putting them on diesel and stuff like that, and all this other stuff. The General Motors really wasn't the EV1 by General Motors in like the 90s was kind of the first car, and it got shelved and mothballed. For those of you who know, it was a very brief experiment, and the car barely had any range. I think the car, and I remember when the EV1 came out, and I remember when the EV1 was sort of a thing. General Motors EV1, I remember that. General Motors EV1, how I remember this. So it was produced and leased from 96 to 99, and a lot of people thought this was going to be the wave of the future. They produced over 1,000 units, and they were done in Lansing, Michigan. They had a 3-phase alternating current AC induction motor with a power inverter that delivered a total of 137 horsepower and 1,100 foot-pounds of torque from 7 to 7,000 RPM. So from the basic engine to like the red line. Let's see. The revised 99%, the revised procedure for 2019 would have put it at 55 miles, and the 9 would have put it at 105, and then with the original it would have been 78. So yeah, this thing only had 78 miles, and it was soon mothballed after. So, and I forget how much these cost. Oh yeah, by the way, so the NIM was the name of the battery. So the NIM battery, so nickel metal hydrate battery. It basically like the batteries you put in your car, and then lead acid was obviously, you know, like the regular battery you put in the car, you know, that sort of thing. And what killed it, I believe it was cost. And then there was also a recall for them, if I can remember correctly. And they got subsequently crushed. Yeah, so they were kind of radical. That's what one of those looked like. It was dent resistant. It was supposed to be a thing of the future. And they really didn't really go off that well. And they were only available in California, Arizona, and Georgia. That kind of wouldn't have worked. Back then. So yeah, so they kind of killed themselves. And top speed was only 80. It had a top speed of 80. It went from 0 to 60 in 9 seconds. So yeah, and it cost $33,000, and most vehicles at the time didn't even cost anything close to that. So most luxury cars, like a Jag back in 1999, used to be, I think it was like 45 to 50 grand. So optioned up with a couple new motors and stuff like that, and with new batteries and stuff like that, the thing would have pushed probably $40,000, and probably today, probably adjusted for inflation today, one official cost that cost the company $80,000. Stated the EV cost $250,000 each, and were at least $300 a month. They only wanted $33 million, and by the way, the Clinton administration was kind of part of this too. This is kind of during the Clinton administration, you know, those people. So in 1999, and I purchased it for $33,450. That same item would cost $61,000, which is exactly what most basic EVs going to cost today. So, if the EV one was sold today, it probably cost $61,000 to $65,000. And then eventually, 10 years later, and probably during Elon Musk's time in college, he probably looked at that and said, "Huh, well, I'm going to make a car that doesn't look boring, and I'm going to make a car, an existing car, so I don't have to make production costs all that high, so I can sell the car for 150 grand. So he came up with the Lotus Elise-based Tesla Model S. So yeah, the whole alternate propulsion thing is not brand new, ladies and gentlemen. It's been around for quite some time, and it's been quite the journey just to see how far the EV has gone. And I remember when the Tesla Model S and the X and the 3 and the Y and the Roadster that's supposed to come out but hasn't come out yet have come out. All the Coupe have come out in the intervening years. So it's definitely not. So my thoughts on this for the last like 5-10 minutes of this video are like this. They're not reinventing the wheel. This has been done before. Obviously, alternate propulsion has been a thing for many, many years. Do I think they have the infrastructure to kind of convert to all electric? I don't think they do. I don't think they do, to be honest. And it's kind of a shame that a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't see the evils of this whole thing and how these are pushing us to do this. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, this will save the planet, and this will the cars will cost less, and they won't hurt the environment and stuff like that." I just want to leave you guys with this. They're going to hurt the environment no matter what, because the process to make the batteries, no matter whether they're lithium ion or solid state batteries or whatever, they're all going to cost billions of dollars, and they're going to wreck the environment because of acid rain and pollution and all this other stuff. So they're actually doing more damage. And for those of you who don't think that I'm exaggerating and dumb like this, Top Gear actually did a diagram of how a Toyota Prius battery gets made, and how you can say Prius or Prius, I don't care. And he goes over how much damage that this does to the environment. That you coal mining, sulfur mining, lithium, they transfer it to a foam which is highly toxic to human beings and stuff like that. They put in the batteries. He says that they do more. He says that it does as much or maybe even more environmental damage than a Land Rover Discovery or a Range Rover does during the course of its lifetime, with the emissions coming out of its tailpipe. So there's a trade-off, and you're not really saving the environment. You're just really kind of accelerating the problem by doing this. And while it's great, it would be good if we had an infrastructure or a set, and then we kind of roll the cars out a little bit more. And everybody's like, "Oh, there's superchargers all over the place." I'm like, that's not a problem. Well, name me a couple places in Massachusetts where there's superchargers that are near me. For those of you in the Brockton, Randolph, Holbrook, Stoughton, Braintree, and Braintree, I think a lot of the Targets have them, but I can only name one that I've seen physically myself, and that's one at the Target up the street in Stoughton, where people actually can charge their cars while they actually shop. So the charging points are not widely available, and they also need to crack the problems with fires and charging points and being able to charge them faster, because charging them for 12 hours means if you get home late and you have to be at work at 6 and you only have and your charger doesn't want to, if you get home late at like 11, you have to be at work at what, 6 the next day, 6, 7 the next day, you're only going to get 7 hours worth of charging. You're probably not going to, probably only going to get 50%, so kind of sucks. And everybody's like, oh yeah, then that means we're going to have to put charging points at our work, and then that will do that. A lot of people are like going like, oh, so why don't we just put charging points at our office? It's like charging our phones on the socket. Yeah, well, socket's about this big. The charging towers are as tall, if not bigger than the ground floor to the ceiling. See the whole thing here? The Japanese kind of have it a little bit. The Japanese have kind of figured everything out. They kind of figured out a solution without having to go to full EV. I mean, they've got hydrogen in the Mirai, and they've also got the hybrid system on their race cars and on their road cars. I don't know. The Japanese have kind of stumbled upon something. I don't know. They're always crazy and stuff like that. But what do I know? They think that the Chinese, who are their next door neighbors, think they solved the problem by making all these EVs, because they can make them super cheap, and they're obviously the ones that will actually help us build the infrastructure, along with increasing our debt, of course. But I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to talk more about this tomorrow, a little bit as well. I want to talk about some of the advancements I've seen with hybrid technology, and my instances with hybrid and other forms of daily life, whether it be racing or or electric motors in my travels and work. So I know if you guys have done, I'll give you guys an example. It's used to push the carts at a lot of Targets and a lot of retail stores. Just going to give you guys that a little preview, but I'll go into why people are thinking that this is such a good idea, and borrowing from other forms of electric vehicles or battery-driven vehicles, and stuff like that. So, but I'll leave you guys with that thought. And EV. So I'm going to talk about. So this is the EV. Kind of the EV, the look on the the electric vehicle EV landscape, automotive landscape, I guess, going in the next 10-15 years. So I think this is part 1. I'm going to do part 2 tomorrow. So yeah, I'll see you guys then, and hope you guys learn something. I want us to have an option of electric vehicles if we don't want to pay for gasoline, and we want to experience something different, stuff like that. It'd be great to have them, but there's going to be a compromise, I can tell. But I'll get into that tomorrow, and you guys kind of learn about alternate propulsion and what companies have used to actually do things. For those of you who knew about the turbo cars and knew about the turbine cars and the world record cars and stuff like that, give yourself a pat on the back, because not a lot of people know that. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out. Peace out, folks.